All right, a letter came in the mail from Schaefer a few weeks ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. Seems like it was a week ago. But I just haven't got around to putting it up on YouTube. It's been really busy. This is Schaefer Cox's Year of Jubilee webpage. This is the, if you click on this link here, it goes to the video that I consider groundbreaking witness testimony that should allow Schaefer out of prison. Jeremy Baker testifies it was not him that was provoking violence, it was Bill Fulton. If you come down, or if you just search the page for addendum, the word addendum, you can download and read the addendum to the pre-sentence report yourself. Okay, but that's what I'm going to read today. Actually, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I've showed you where to download it. It's 24 pages. And I'm just going to call out the highlights that were circled by Schaefer. He said, by the government, we would add that the 4-level enhancement also applies under 2K2.1B6A for possession of firearms and ammunition with knowledge, intent, or reason to believe that it would be transported out of the United States. Barney testified that the plan was for Cox to leave Alaska and to flee the 48 via Canada. Then he also highlights this, for Cox to bring with him when he left the state. Cox had packaged and wrapped some of the items at Barney's house before moving them into the trailer. Barney and Cox drove that trailer to the ice park on the day that they were planning on meeting up with the truck driver to get to the lower 48. So Schaefer Cox makes a statement, so now you admit I was leaving. I can't be leaving and conspiring to murder. Either I was running or fighting. So that's a good point. And he says, by the defense. This is from Espeland, Derek Espeland, sent to June Monda Jr. or whatever. Schaefer Cox was exposed as a self-aggrandizing fraud. He didn't have a plan at all. Even if he had a plan, there were allegedly other plans to off, meaning to kill, Schaefer Cox 48 hours after the revolution began. Schaefer Cox has gone from a cadre of 24 down to 2. Him and his number 2, Les Derby. He actually means Les Derby. So this is a FBI agent admitting that Schaefer Cox does not have a plan to kill anybody. Excuse me. Excuse me. Here's Richard Sutherland, who is the FBI handler for Gerald J.R. Olson, sent to Sandra Klein, who was the FBI handler for Bill Fulton. Schaefer Cox is not willing to meet confidential human source 2. Does not want him to know he is still in Fairbanks. So Schaefer Cox didn't even want to meet with Bill Fulton, or that he know that Bill Fulton is, or for Bill Fulton to know that Schaefer Cox is in Fairbanks. The reason is because Bill Fulton was threatening the life of Schaefer Cox. He wants CHS-1, which is Olson, to broker the deal with the trucker to leave. Schaefer Cox is willing to meet with the trucker to discuss transport, which is more evidence that Schaefer Cox wanted to leave the state of Alaska rather than to conspire to murder anybody. This is highlighted. We need to listen to the audio before we tell Scrocky. Confidential human source info has not been 100% accurate before. Yeah, no joke. You got a Hell's Angel prospect wannabe, a lifelong criminal in Gerald J.R. Olson, and you got a fame, a lust after fame guy, which is in Bill Fulton, who wants to be known as the guy who takes down dangerous militiaman. writes a book and tries to become famous. It's no joke that they haven't been honest before. Mr. Barney, yeah, we're all in this together, but I know right now the atmosphere. I don't feel it's right to. If we take up arms, it's going to be. I wonder if anything would really come out of it other than we'll be dead and our wives and children will be left to themselves. I don't think that people around us won't see us as martyrs. Miss Vernon, Speaker, no. Mr. Cox, it'll be a fruitless gesture. After February 19, 2011 meeting, FBI Special Agent Sutherland wrote in an email dated February 19th, "The meeting is over. No immediate threat to law enforcement officials or judicial official identified by a confidential human source." You know, let's just find out real quick if I've uploaded that fruitless gesture, because I believe I probably have. My computer's taking forever for some reason. Really, really, really slow. Why is my computer so slow? My computer's never this slow. Yeah, there you go. It'll be a fruitless gesture. You guys see that? This is it. So I won't play it because it's over 2 minutes, but you can find "It'll be a fruitless gesture. Schaefer Cox agrees with Coleman Barney." We have that on audio. You can listen for that yourself. Okay, also he highlights this. The first few minutes, Barney and CS are talking about grenades. I guess that's confidential source. But talking about a rumor that Cox has grenades off Wainwright. Nobody, and I mean up to now, nobody says there are grenades on the property. Nobody says there are grenades on the property. Okay, this is total Gandhi. Schaefer is saying he wanted to pull a Gandhi, not a Rambo. From Stephen Scrocky to Karen Loeffler. Okay, listen to the conversation from last night. In summary, they are now kicking around ideas. My advice: do not arrest him if he doesn't show, but issue the warrant and let it sit. With the source in place, we'll have the best idea of what's going on, and it won't agitate Cox's followers. You might want to give Mike Gray and the SAC a call tonight too. The SAC can verify with Rick what I'm saying. 241 stands for if they take one of us, we take two of them. But they discuss not being strong enough to impose their views on the rule of law. They discuss everything from 241 to fleeing to the rapture coming and waiting for that. In my view, the FBI source is pushing Cox a bit too hard on not getting arrested, and the source agrees too much in moving their plans forward, which would generate a response, whether violent or not. The source adds, "Why don't we make it a 541? Not a good idea. The FBI has to fix this." After some discussion, 241, Cox says, "We're just speculating here, and I want to hear where you stand." Cox does say he would be morally correct in shooting a judge, but adds that he doesn't want to do that. So he makes the big pronouncement, then backs off. The typical "will, but not just yet" type stuff. This is all about him. He spent almost 2 hours reading and explaining his paperwork, in my view, just to lay out that he's smarter and in charge. It's clear he doesn't understand it, and it's getting it from somebody else. He reads it to be the leader of the group, which he really is. Cox's stated thoughts are, "We are not strong enough to execute or follow through," and says they should do everything we can to avoid it. He says they need to work and train to get ready for when they might have to respond. In response, the source says we can get other militias to support us. Another example of pushing. Cox says we want to bluff them and play and train. He actually says pray, but Scrocky doesn't understand English. He claims the police are afraid of all of them, and says, what do you guys think about this then? After getting various responses, none saying let's go grab and harm people tomorrow, he ends it with bluff it and play. Again, Scrocky doesn't understand basic English. He actually said pray and dream, but adds something that sounds like pull guns. He says at the moment his plan tomorrow is to lay low, and if he gets caught, to play Gandhi, not Rambo. Again, he qualifies almost everything. It's very obvious he wants wiggle room. Goes on to say, Cox discussed Operation 2-for-1. Cox said there would not be a 2-for-1 response if Vernon's house was seized. Cox said that he had lost his business and his residence and that Vernon needed to be prepared to lose his. Cox said that they did not have enough support to pull off a 2-for-1 operation and survive. This is from Richard Sutherland, who is Olson's handler, FBI handler. Here is a super brief update so you can try to answer some questions if you are asked. Cox had a court date for tomorrow for a state weapons charge. 2, the troopers continued his case to December the 10th. 3, Cox had a 7-step plan to coincide with this court date. 4, he calls the plan Operation Nehemiah 5. 5, his plan involves civil disobedience, media coverage, and a declaration that the Alaska court system as void and possessing no authority over him. 6, he plans to call on the troopers and demand a truce. 7, he will provide identification to his followers to identify them to troopers so that the troopers leave them alone and refer them to Cox. 8, he has a TV appearance on live TV scheduled for tonight to kick off his big plan. We've got a file name for that too. That's interesting. In a recorded meeting with CH5, he stated over and over that he did not want violence and that he did not want to see any cops hurt. He has armed a militia security team with C5 gas, CS gas, and Hornet grenades as a diversion squad if needed. There is more to the overall plan, but this is a overview, emphasis added. Whatever the problem was with Schaefer Cox, if he was killed with OCS attempting to take his son, then obviously anything to do with him wouldn't matter to anyone. That's what Gibson he was told that by a U.S. Marshal. Gibson went on to say he was so alarmed by this conversation with the FBI that he sought out and contacted Mr. Cox and relayed what he had been told. The information added to Mr. Cox's paranoia that the federal government was trying to engage him in violent confrontation to kill him. The law enforcement people who were investigating Mr. Cox recognized his paranoia about being the focus of a federal hit squad. The following email is from Fairbanks District Attorney. Okay. To follow up on my conversation this morning, we must be careful in responding to Cox to not act like him. He tells his folks that an assassination squad is up from Colorado to kill him. His homies talk about the same among themselves. He hears it from somebody that heard it from him, and all of a sudden it's confirmed. Let's keep going here. I don't know if there's any more highlights or not. That might be it. Oh, here we go. With regard to the Hornet's Nest and 37mm launchers, Defense Counsel wrote, I believe it should be noted that the body of the PSR that both the Hornet's Nest canisters and the 37mm launchers are lawfully sold without any registration requirement. These are lawful items having legitimate uses. The charges in this case were brought because the government argued that the two items together could be used, and in this case the government argued were intended to be used as a destructive device. The fact that these items are readily and legally available distinguishes this case from other cases where the destructive device at issue involves wholly illegal items. The law on this issue is as follows. The definition of a firearm 2 includes a destructive device, see 26 U.S.C. 5845A, and see also United States v. Johnson 152 F3D 618 623 7th Circuit 1998. If the objective design of the device indicates that the object serves no legitimate social or commercial purposes, subjective intent is not relevant to the analysis. See Johnson 152 F.3D and 628. However, if the assembled device or unassembled parts may form an object with both a legitimate and a non-legitimate use, then subjective intent must also be shown. Finally, a destructive device includes any explosive weapon which will expel a projectile by the action of an explosives or any other propellant. See 26 U.S.C. 5845F. We also have Schaefer Cox was exposed as a self-aggrandizing fraud. He did not have a plan at all. Even if he had a plan, there were allegedly other plans to off SC 48 hours after the revolution began. SC has gone from a cadre of 24 down to 2, him and his number 2, Les Serby. That's a statement by the FBI. They knew that he didn't have a plan. In a separate debriefing of CI2, Sutherland wrote that an emergency meeting was called for the evening of Sunday, June 13, 2010, to discuss Schaefer Cox's plans. The meeting was supposed to start at 8 p.m. Cox's second-in-command, Les Serby, arrived at 8:40 p.m., and Cox did not arrive until 9:30 p.m. By that time, those in attendance had consumed alcohol and discussed Cox's over-controlling character, and that many in the movement did not care for him. The general consensus was that if Cox was to start the revolution, the movement have someone kill him after 48 hours. In that same CI2 told Sutherland, Cox is a member leader of an Alaska Peacekeepers militia. However, the CHS believes this organization is defunct since Cox was exposed as a fraud during the meeting on Sunday evening. Okay, this is it. Mr. Cox planned to leave Alaska. By the time of his arrest on March 10, 2011, Mr. Cox was planning to leave the state. He had abandoned his home and his businesses. He was seeking a way for he and his family to leave the state of Alaska. He only stayed until March 10th because of the ruse the government played in delaying the arrival of the fictitious trucker who was supposed to transport Mr. Cox and his family out of Alaska. In addition, Mr. Cox was described by this point in time by CI1 as the CHS said that Cox is trying to grow a beard and that Cox seemed fatigued and really ready to leave the state. After a March 4, 2011 meeting with Mr. Cox, CI1 told Agent Sutherland, Cox seemed down and the fugitive status seemed to be weighing on him. Cox is ready to leave the state. Cox is ready to meet the trucker who will transport him. So this document is available for download on Year of Jubilee website. Just go to the Cox page, search for the word Addendum, and there you go, Addendum to the pre-sentence report. You can download it and read it for yourself. This is a letter that came in the United States mail a week or so ago, and I wanted to get this up on YouTube and make sure you knew it was available. Thank you for your time. God bless and take care.